Call the special city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hader. Here. Stilgren. Here. Vining.
Here.
Stringham. Here. Felder.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. So we have a one item, unless there's any changes, looking at the administration or attorney.
One item.
Okay. So if there's any questions, Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I motion that we go into closed executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilwoman Germaini to go into closed executive session for collective bargaining. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hader.
Yes.
Stilgrave. Yes. Vining. Germaini.
Yes.
Stringham. Yes. Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. We need a motion to go back into open session.
I make a motion that we return to regular order business.
Motion by Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Germaine.
Ready? Councilperson Hayter?
Yes.
Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham? Yes. Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. City Manager, I don't think we have anything further on this agenda other than that it was posted, so I guess it's just a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
This motion and support to adjourn. And clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham? Yes. Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes, very good. Thank you all. I thought this topic would have sparked some. Item is?
The first item is public comment.
Okay, we'll see if there's any public comment here this evening. I don't see. So next item.
The work session agenda, item 5373, discussion regarding proposed fireworks ordinance.
Thank you. Manager Robinson, I know we have some information in front of us, but any introductions and how we get going?
Yes, Your Honor, as the 4th of July has just passed, and believe it or not, we were looking at this prior to the 4th of July, but I think this is something that has been on our to-do list for a while, and I think that this is something that, I had asked Director Tolstad along with Director Cochran to look into these things and about what are other people doing ever since when the Michigan legislature put together their fireworks, the newest law that's there. And basically the state law regarding fireworks is that basically says that local units of government can't regulate the state law during those dates. But pretty much everything outside of that realm, it is within the local jurisdiction to be able to regulate the fireworks per ordinance. So I'd like to ask Director Cochran, who's done a lot of research, and he was talking all fireworks crazy this morning, so he has a nice overview for you today.
Cochran.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Clerk Treasurer Lavoy. So this is certainly a hot topic this week, no pun intended. But coming off the heels of the 4th of July, we thought it might be good to take an opportunity to discuss with council, because I think we've all gotten some calls about fireworks within the past several weeks. And so want to take some time just to talk about, what is in the state law, and clear up possibly some confusion and misunderstanding about what is the state law, what does it regulate, and what is our ability locally at the city to regulate fireworks. And then also talk about, have a discussion with City Council about where we want to go from here based on information that's being presented tonight. So as City Manager Robinson mentioned, in 2011, Public Act 256 was passed and signed by the governor, the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act, that took effect on January 1st, 2012. The act deals a lot, I will say, if you read the full act, it deals a lot with the sale of fireworks, the transportation of fireworks, and somewhat the discharge of fireworks. But a couple of things that to highlight of note is that there are different types and definitions of classes of fireworks. Consumer fireworks are generally the ones that we see individuals or amateurs set off. These are the fireworks that are sold in the parking lots that you see in the stores around the 4th of July and several holidays. And then there are what's called display fireworks, and those are the much larger fireworks that are put on by professionals or at more organized events and displays. And each of those definitions or each of those categories of fireworks match up with some definitions that are in federal law and the Consumer Product Safety Commission's definitions and regulations on fireworks nationally, and also the American Pyrotechnics Association. However, the law does talk about novelties, and these are things like caps, cap guns, snakes, snaps that you throw on the ground, sparklers, fountains, pretty much the type that don't make a noise or that are smoke and that don't really combust. And I did add on this slide, and also you should have a copy of the presentation for you to take tonight and review. But on the left of the slide, there's a flyer that's available on the state's website about fireworks, and it talks about the different kinds and gives some examples. So all of these are legal to be sold and discharged in the state of Michigan based on the regulations that are in the act. We are not allowed to do any regulations or prohibitions on novelty items that you see on the bottom, and those are the categories or examples that I just described. So in Act 256, there is a language and there's a section that describes that local units of government like us can regulate the use of consumer fireworks, including but not limited to prescribing the hours in the day and night of discharge, except for the dates that are listed after 11 a.m. So this is generally New Year's Eve until 1 a.m. on New Year's Day, after 11 o'clock on the Saturday and Sunday preceding Memorial Day, but not on Memorial Day itself until 11:45 p.m. And then on the period that begins on June 29th through July 4th between 11 a.m. and 11:45 p.m. each of those days. And then if July 5th is on a Saturday or a Sunday, as it was this year, fireworks are also allowed in certain circumstances between the hours of 11 a.m. and 11:45 p.m. And then the same regulations for Labor Day as Memorial Day on the Saturday and Sunday preceding Labor Day from 11 a.m. to 11:45, but not on Labor Day itself. So these are the days that the state says you're allowed to shoot off fireworks in the state of Michigan, and the local unit of government cannot regulate or do anything after 11 a.m. So that's important. Before 11 a.m., we can if we choose to. But the language is very important in the act in that these are the only days that the state regulates. Days outside of these days, like a random Saturday in September or this past weekend, the state is silent. So the state does not prohibit fireworks outside these dates or regulate them on dates outside these dates. And that is the language where the local unit of government is allowed to regulate the discharge of fireworks on our own. Any questions so far?
So last weekend, we could be regulating what probably most of us heard last week.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and right now, the city, besides our noise ordinance, we don't have anything that regulates the time that fireworks can be discharged. So on these holidays, after 1 o'clock a.m. on New Year's Day, we don't have anything that says they have to stop at 1 a.m. We can only not stop them before 1 a.m. So that's why we're talking about this evening.
So when we say fireworks have to stop at 11:45, that's because the state says that?
So the state says we are not allowed to regulate them before 11:45. Right now, there's nothing that says in state or local ordinances that says they can't be set off after 11:45, except for our noise ordinance, which does regulate noises after certain periods.
So Mark, just for clarity again, so that's why we're having the conversation to see if there's appetite for the council to put an ordinance in place that would specifically state other times that where the state allows it, other hours it could still continue because we have nothing in place.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I know you got more to cover too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the act does go on to regulate even within those periods. So the times after 11 a.m., before 11:45 or 1 a.m., these are the regulations about where folks can set fireworks off or discharge those consumer fireworks. So at any time, whether on those days or otherwise, fireworks are not allowed to be discharged on public property. So that includes parks, streets, sidewalks, any publicly owned property. church property, schools, or another person's property without their permission. So when we think about we've had some experiences where folks set off fireworks in the street on the 4th of July, or they set them off in parks on New Year's Eve. That is not allowed, whether it's during those days when the state allows them or otherwise. So over this past weekend, tonight, tomorrow night, they are not allowed to be on public property or anybody else's property without permission, period. And the state does prescribe, if we were to develop an ordinance, a violation cannot be any more than $500. So in this instance, the state fire marshal can charge a violation fee if somebody is found to be setting off fireworks against the state law, but there is no local violation or local civil fine that we can charge. Also, a person igniting fireworks is not allowed to be under the influence of alcohol or controlled substance as defined in the Michigan Vehicle Code. And so the Michigan Vehicle Code defines what a controlled substance is. In a violation of that piece of the act is not more than $1,000. And then local units of government may enact ordinances regulating the hour and the day of fireworks outside of those dates permitted by law. However, the state law does say that we cannot set a civil fine or a civil ordinance violation any more than $1,000. And then if whatever we charge, $500 of it must go to the local police agency that's enforcing our ordinance. There was some discussion internally related to fireworks, and we thought that there was a component in the law that said you cannot allow, if you set off fireworks, you cannot allow the debris to litter on somebody else's property. In our review of the act, there was no provision for that. However, a violation of the section is a misdemeanor, and you can be imprisoned for not more than 30 days, or a fine of $1,000, not more than $1,000, or both. If you cause damage to the property of another person, that is a misdemeanor violation and potentially 90 days in jail, or a fine of not more than $5,000, or both. So that is talking about damage alone, if you damage somebody else's property, not litter. If the violation causes impairment of a body function or injures another person, that is a felony, an imprisonment of not more than 5 years, or a fine of not more than $5,000. And then if you cause death, it's a felony punishable by 15 years in jail and not more than $10,000 of a fine. So those are the violations that are defined in the state act. Any questions on that?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Should be good.
So that dealt with consumer fireworks and the discharge of fireworks by individuals or private residents. However, the state does allow and regulate display fireworks. And these are the larger fireworks. These are more organized displays. These are requests for a public or private display. So public meaning it's open to the public, anybody can come. Private could even be somebody shooting them off in their backyard and they're planning to have a display outside of those dates where it's regulated by the state. And so the local unit of government, that's us, may issue a permit for a display fireworks for public or private display. So it doesn't just limit it to public displays or public events. For an application for that permit, we are required to use a form that's provided by the state. And so we had taken a look at, is there an opportunity that if somebody wanted to have a fireworks display, they would submit a special event application, as most special events do. The answer is no. We have to use the state that is, or the form that is provided by the state, and link that. Anybody who requests a permit to have a fireworks display has to show a proof of financial responsibility in the amount that is set by the local unit of government to satisfy claims of damage or injury. This is pretty typical that we do this for special event applications where we require liability insurance naming the city as additionally insured with a certain amount depending on the level of event or the level of potential harm in the event. So we set that, but it is required by anybody who wants to have a fireworks display that they have to have liability insurance naming the city as insured. The state also requires that the city is not allowed to issue permits to anybody who is not a resident of the city of Monroe. However, we can issue if they name a city resident as the legal representative for the event that becomes the responsible party for the event. So if we have an out-of-town company or a special event organizer that wants to have fireworks display somewhere in the city, we cannot issue them a permit. However, they have to work with somebody who is a resident, and that person becomes the responsible party that is responsible for meeting all the requirements of the city and the law. And before a permit is issued, the local unit of government, in this case the city manager, must rule on the competency and qualifications of the pyrotechnic and the operator. So in this instance, what we would do if we were to consider issuing permits for display fireworks, this would likely result in background checks for the operator to make sure that they don't have violations, that they haven't been cited in the past, that they do have the necessary training, certifications, and licenses to set off safely a display event. While the state does not have a license for firework operators or pyrotechnics, it does speak to the U.S. Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There is certain licenses for the possession, the sale, the transportation, and the discharge of fireworks and explosives through the ATF, and we would look for that certification as well from an operator. And then we can collect and retain a fee for the permit application, and we retain the full fee. We do not have to send a portion of it to the state or anybody else. So these are for displays.
So I have a question on the competency and qualifications. Qualifications, I get could be tied to a certificate, training, X amount of experience. Competency in the use of fireworks or other?
Mm-hmm. So the state doesn't speak to what is considered competent. They really leave that up to our determination or the city's determination. And we would set up the parameters in terms of what we would look for in competency. I mentioned that the definition of consumer and display fireworks is based on criteria by the American Pyrotechnics Association, and they have trainings and certifications as well for folks who are trained and operated or opt to operate and discharge fireworks. So that is something if City Council wanted to move in this direction and have a permit for display fireworks, we would look to see what is it we would be looking for to determine that somebody is competent and qualified.
I always think about fireworks, and I think probably most everybody here has been to a fireworks display or show in the past, but there's a buffer area in which people can be.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, knowing what that is and somebody setting it up, that matters in the safety area.
So we would look as part of that, if we would set up what is it we're looking for in an application. While we have to use the state's form for an application, we can request additional information to be part of that application.
It's like a site. Plan
Yes,
or something.
in the safety plan.
Right now, Mark, are we just, for people who are having public displays, are they just meeting with the fire marshal right now?
Yeah, so as we've done it in the past, if somebody requests to have a fireworks display, we haven't necessarily been using the state's form. We have them fill out a special event application. We review it. That's if they come to us and ask permission. I think about an event that was several years ago with the national park, the Rally on the River. They had a fireworks display, and that was part of a comprehensive special event review that we looked at. But generally, we haven't had a whole lot other than interest and discussion about folks who are interested in, I would say, gaining our approval for a fireworks display. But we know they're happening, right? Mhm.
Okay. Andrew?
With regards to the additional documents that we can require as part of the application, in addition to the required state form, things like a site plan, as the mayor had mentioned, I think would be prudent in some cases because the safety of the fireworks and the display itself is certainly important, but also if we're going to invite a couple hundred people to come watch, things like having enough restrooms available for everyone probably matters. And I don't know if things like that are going to be included in the state's form.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that there can be additional documentation requested. As part of that, of course, we probably don't want to make it prohibitive for people either, so.
And certainly traffic, concerns. If you're having a large fireworks display, where is it going to be? Does the area have the ability to, if you're advertising it publicly, to meet anticipated traffic needs and service the area? Other things I know, and we'll get into this a little bit, some of the things that we would look for in an application, or if we develop a policy to allow for permits for display fireworks, storage. So if somebody is setting them up in the morning and they're not getting shot off until 10 o'clock at night, how are they make sure that those are safe and that they're not going to accidentally explode during the day? Those are all factors and considerations that is best practices recommended and what we've seen other communities do as well.
So, Mark, I think your point, Andrew's question is you think about having, if permissible, as we move forward, we, as you said, we know that there's already events that are going on, and whether it be in private and also in public grounds. And this is kind of maybe what's kind of bringing this back around. But when you talk about the years past here, they had significant fireworks display out at the Sterling State Park. And of course, there's a lot of logistics to that, and there's a lot of people that went out there. I'm trying to think about that if we had a request for more than I'll say a neighborhood show that maybe get requested, and it's done through their own social media. But I don't know how you'd stop anybody from showing up if they hear about it.
Sure.
And then, of course, marketing and messaging, logistically making sure that moves smoothly. Of course, I know public safety would have a lot of input into that when you think about in and out and emergency. It wouldn't want to have an emergency response, but if there is, how that gets structured. Just
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah.
So if I can ask a clarifying question, currently the city does not have an ordinance on the books prohibiting firework usage on non-prohibited days. Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And I guess to follow that as well, the current legislation, it can't be on public property or property they don't own, the list that's there. So that alone that's not permissible even within the days.
Period.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
When we're talking about a proposed ordinance to prohibit fireworks displays on public or private property, at the beginning of the presentation, we made a distinction between displays and consumer fireworks. I'm thinking if a family wants to shoot off reasonable fireworks on a child's birthday or something, would the ordinance also prohibit things like that? And do we want to have a discussion about? Or would this just be for those massive displays that are?
Well, again, I think it might go back to the days, I don't, I appreciate thinking, well, I want to set up some fireworks for my kid's birthday. That's probably every day of the year then, because there's going to be a birthday potentially in which somebody would want to celebrate. So how do we manage that side of the conversation versus, is there other days out in addition to these that the state allows that would be considered? And if not, then they would be in violation, correct? If we had an ordinance.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit in the presentation about how we're looking to, I think, address the issue of them going off on days that are not permitted by the state, but also allow for an avenue for approval at the same time.
Mike?
Mark, could you give us a brief description of what the city's noise ordinance is right now, so we can just compare the two?
Should have anticipated that question tonight. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I think it's 10 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.
And it goes by decibels and the threshold of what's permitted.
Kelly?
We have a decibel meter. How we determine decibel?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but we can get the answer.
That's a thing. I just always wondered, is there some kind of meter?
And generally, it talks about it can't disturb adjacent properties and things of that sort. So while I think legally we have to have the threshold in there, I think in general, it can't be disruptive to peace and order, and it can't infringe upon your neighbor's right to enjoy their property peacefully.
And that has been the challenge, Kelly, and I know for public safety is how do you measure that, and how do you measure it at the time when you're not there to measure it? The person calls and says it's way crazy loud or something, no matter what that is, and you get there and it's not. There's how you could have even a decibel reader, but how would you know? You know,
I think in a lot of those regulations, there's in the ordinances that where they use a decibel meter, they also give a distance. Like can't be more than 75 decibels at 150 feet or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's two measures. That's a good
Yes.
point. Other questions?
So that's a great segue into why we're talking about the need for a local ordinance. And I think we've talked about without a local ordinance, state law is silent on the discharge of fireworks in local units of government outside the days that are required to be, the days and times that are required to be allowed by the state law. And so if we want to address it, we have to adopt our own ordinance as the act allows. But also, if we want to consider allowing them, what is the procedure for approving firework display on public or private property? So to your point, Councilman Felder, if it's a private display of fireworks or the private utilization of fireworks, and we want to allow for that in certain circumstances, what is the procedure that we want to follow? So, I guess for a couple discussion points, the question is whether we want to prohibit fireworks displays on public or private properties outside of the days permitted by Act 56, except for approved display permits as provided by law. So many communities, I looked up probably close to 50 different ordinances that I could find online. In most units of government, just prohibit them, period, outside the days that are prescribed by the state law. But they do allow for display permits and a procedure for display permits to be submitted to the city. So we can ponder on that for a minute. But also, requests for fireworks displays shall be reviewed by application submitted to the city manager. So similar to our special event application, the city manager shall promulgate a policy to prescribe conditions for approval of display requests. So this is a proposal that we're bringing, that we prohibit fireworks outside those days that are required by state law, but allow for an application or a permit to be submitted and approved to the city manager for displays outside of those dates. And we would have an administrative policy rather than put into ordinance everything that would be required in order to be approved, much like we don't for special events right now, because everything is unique, that the city would produce guidelines that would meet the criteria. So how much insurance, what is a site plan needs to be submitted, what is the fee, what's the other fees that are associated that we'll talk about here in a minute. And so while we prohibit it, we still allow for an avenue for fireworks displays to happen only with special approval of the city manager. Some of the criteria. So when we're thinking about that policy, some of the things, a lot of this is already found on the state's application form that we have to use. But we would review the location of the fireworks. If it's in the middle of a densely populated neighborhood, that may not be a good idea when you're shooting off fireworks that go up into the air, littering debris on property. If you're inviting the whole community to join and observe the fireworks, what is the traffic circulation? So looking at where do they want to have them and whether we want to allow them in that specific location or allow them to have them somewhere else. The applicant must contract with a professional licensed pyrotechnic operator, including ATF licenses. So this is that qualified and experienced or certified pyrotechnic operator, making sure that if somebody is going to set off fireworks at an event, that they're doing it safely and they know how to discharge fireworks, set up fireworks so that it doesn't endanger health and property. Establish the minimum insurance requirements, naming the city as additionally insured. A site and a safety plan to be submitted, reviewed, and approved by the fire marshal, but also include what is the manner for storage of the display prior to the display, and making sure that it's safe until the display goes off. One of the issues that we have run into and that many other communities deal with, whether it's on the 4th of July, whether it's on the days that are approved by the state, is the litter and debris that is left behind. Our parks crews on July 5th this year spent no less than 4 hours cleaning up our parks because people were lighting off fireworks and they were having to spend the time to clean it up because they didn't clean up after themselves. So much like we do similar to other special event applications, like when somebody rents the band shell, they have to put a deposit down on the key, they come pick the key up and they bring it back and we give the deposit back. We could require a cleanup bond or a cleanup deposit where we set a certain threshold, and if they sufficiently clean up the area in which we approved and allowed them to set off the firework, we would return that deposit. Otherwise, we would keep it to reimburse the costs that were incurred by the city to clean up from the display. And this is where dealing with that littering. I looked up the city of Birmingham, and they had a civil violation was if you caused debris or litter on a surrounding property, or you caused damage to another property. The key word is it was intentionally and recklessly. So that was a term out of their ordinance. And then the state law does require that the city manager shall rule on the competency and qualifications, so we would include that in the application. And then also establish what is our violation fee schedule. And so the state does prescribe the maximums for various violations, but we can go up to that. Do we want it to be that? We would have the ability to set that ourselves. So those are some of the considerations that we would want to consider if somebody is going to light fireworks or request to set off fireworks on our property. But also if somebody is having a private display, we would want to make sure that it's being done in a location that doesn't endanger other people, that's done safely, that somebody is experienced and qualified to do it within the purview that we have and the authority that we have.
So I'll see if there's questions. First one, on this third item there, minimum insurance requirements. I should have asked before because can be obtained. If not, what is the minimum currently when we have events? I'm not saying every event for a liability policy. I know I always hear $1 million, but then what is the cost to the applicant for just a range of what that cost that they have to pay to get a policy like that? I just don't recall.
Yeah, generally, I know in our special event applications, Assistant City Manager Ed Sell always reviews it because he deals with our liability insurance and our carrier. Generally, it's a minimum of $1 million, but we look at what is the nature of the event and the prospective danger in the event. It could go up to $2 million or higher based on criteria that we use. I will say for about $1 million, it depends on your insurance carrier, but it's generally about could be between $70 to $150 or $200, depending on your carrier.
That's what I thought, but it was in that amount. But some insurance carriers may charge more, and of course, it may charge more because it's fireworks versus having an event where you're going to have maybe stage use and just people that could have any type of injury. So
And it depends on the organization too and their history, and so it's all based on what their insurance company will.
I didn't ask for those that might be watching this later to say, well, that's how much. It's only going to cost that much. I have no idea. I can't remember. I just know that generally when I see those come along, there's an insurance policy for $1 million, and some have been more. But I can't speak to what the amount is. And I guess people will find out if we go that path.
I think our general range, and the majority of them are 1 million, but I think sometimes when there's alcohol permits involved, we up it to either 2 million to potentially, if it's an event where there's physical activity, a soccer tournament, something like that, we will up it to 3 million, where there's anything where there would be a higher likelihood of injury that could be obtained on our city property is the range. But I haven't seen us issue anything over, or request anything over the 3 million.
Soccer tournament comes into Munson Field and there's 100 and some teams that show up. That's a lot of youth, a lot of people, a lot of cars, just the potential, as we always say, for what could be and how we risk manage the best we can.
Yeah, and another example this year, or last year, City Council updated the park rules, and we now allow bounce houses in the parks. But we do require additional insurance on those because of the risk. If it blows away or somebody gets injured using it, we don't want somebody coming back on us. And those are pretty significant injuries that get posed. So we found a way to yes, but also protecting our interests in the city organization.
There's other questions, and as we get to, before we close. Kelly?
Just for clarity, if we put this local ordinance in, is it for consumer and display fireworks, the ordinance?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But were you differentiating on this little, I can't really see, what type of fireworks would be regulated under this ordinance?
Yeah, so these are, we can do a couple different things. We can outright prohibit consumer fireworks all year, doesn't matter where, on public, private property, and that be that. And then allow for displays and permit displays for public events or special events and things of that sort. We do have the ability, if we want to say, if you want to set off consumer fireworks on your property, the city will allow that. It depends on how we want to regulate that and within our authority.
Okay. Mike?
Just for what you said though, but if they were doing it after 10 PM, they would be in violation of the city's, more than likely, the city's noise ordinance.
And we would look at an ordinance that would prescribe that a little more deeper than just the noise ordinance. So, like if there's an event in the middle of summertime, the weekend after the 4th of July special event, I know this weekend they've got the fair fireworks. And it's not now it's getting dark earlier, but sometimes it doesn't get dark until after 10 PM. So, by special event or special permit approval, we can't allow them after 10 o'clock. So we would want to each event is different, and that's why it's hard to put it into an ordinance, because if you're doing fireworks on Christmas Day, the timing is going to be a lot different on when you want to set them off than in the middle of June.
Other questions, comments? Kelly, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I like the idea if I want to light a firework on my personal property, that I got to come to the city and ask permission to do it. So, I mean, I get it for the larger, the larger fireworks and whatnot, or if you're having a planned display where you're bringing people, but like if we're just in the backyard lighting off bottle rockets or whatever, fireworks on our own property, I don't know if I like the idea of being regulated and having to go through the whole special permit process because I went and bought a little box of fireworks at Kmart's.
A challenge to that, though, could be I set off an M80 in my backyard at 12:30 in the morning. I can buy that at Meyer, and it's considered consumer-grade fireworks.
Yeah, but you couldn't buy them like in a local store. You can't buy an M80 you have to go to a fireworks facility and buy it. So that's why I think, in my mind, determining the level, I don't know how they determine levels or how much gunpowder or whatever is in fireworks, but you have little I don't know if you know what I mean, where you can go buy a little package of fireworks at Walmart or whatever. Those are not going to be M80s or these big rounds that you can get at the fireworks store. So I think it's really different. Even the amount of noise they create, even how high they go up in the air, all of it is different.
So I guess I've got a follow-up question to that. So a consumer can buy fireworks that do go up in the air
Mhm.
and it's still considered consumer. It's not by the type of firework. It's the fact I want to light fireworks off my yard and I'm going to get the ones that we've seen here just over the past weekend.
Yeah, I know there's the fireworks store, I think on 23 near Whiteford Township, and they sell all the consumer fireworks that are, pretty loaded, that make quite a bit of noise when they go up in the air and explode, and those are also considered consumer. So I will say it gets rather hard to differentiate, because when I was trying to look up the definition of consumer versus display, there were about 5 sections in the Consumer Product Safety Code I had to look at, as well as 3 sections in the American Pyrotechnics Association. And to understand all of that and differentiate exactly how high in the air it goes, how far wide it spreads, how loud it is, I think it can be a challenge. That's why looking at things like the novelties, like the fountains, the sparklers, those are non-combustible. Those don't make noise, and the state says we are not allowed to regulate those, period, except they can't be on public property. And so I think trying to differentiate a Roman candle from an aerial firework versus a display firework, and whether we want to allow those or the parameters for each of those categories can be a challenge. But
Yeah, I understand it's challenging, but I think it does make a difference. I mean, if you would have seen the fireworks in my neighborhood, I couldn't believe that they bought them at a store. Like, I couldn't believe it. I don't know where they got these fireworks. They were higher than state park fireworks. Like, we didn't even need state park fireworks because the display that they put on, even though they didn't clean up properly and all this other stuff, but that's different than me and my grandkids in the backyard lighting off a couple little fireworks. So to me, I think the distinction matters. I understand it could be challenging, but I think it makes a difference. That's just my thought.
and understand,
And but you have consumer and what that's defined and what's a display. A display is they're going to have a display with a bunch of people. A consumer can light the fireworks you're just liking, which I have challenged with some of it. If them doing it themselves in the backyard, it's permissible. And how do you make the distinction between, well, that person only lets these ones go and this person doesn't? If it's consumer and it meets that definition, I think then there'll be, I don't know how we could differentiate that. I understand what you're saying.
yeah.
I understand what your appetite is for that, you would like it to see it be, but somebody down the block could say, well, I'm a consumer and I bought these things and here they go.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, is there levels to it? Like you're saying an M80, but then they got these big drum things now that let off,
Yeah.
like.
I'll be honest with you. I think probably the fireworks that you saw in your neighborhood would likely be considered consumer grade fireworks.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about display grades fireworks, I believe a lot of those display grade is where you have these people with the ATF licenses who are doing these actual programs out at state parks and different areas, different cities when they hire them. Those are display grade that require somebody with that kind of. If you can go into the place on US 23 that he was referring to, and likelihood were the people who are setting them off, or likelihood that last Friday when we had that firework display and people could see them from all over the city, those were consumer grade fireworks. And that is where we're looking for your input. Do we want to accept that in our city? Because I will tell you, in my office on the 5th through the 7th, the phone calls I was getting where people, the number one complaint, quite honestly, is people upset because of the reaction of their pets and what it was doing to their pets. Number two, it was the mess that they left behind because they were, I even know somebody who had damage on their car from something that came down and things like that. And, you know, one of the complainers had to go over and help a couple, an older couple, clean out their pool from all the debris from these things. Those were consumer grade fireworks. And that's why I think the novelty section that was at the very bottom of that graph, which is the little snakes and the little fountains and those things that you would have at like a child's birthday party, I think those are the items that we can't regulate, which would be something that we would welcome in the city that we can't tell people you can't do that. But when consumer grade fireworks can be anywhere from a bottle rocket that you could probably shoot 10 houses away once you light it, and it pops at the very end, to those fountains that are shooting up probably 3 stories higher than your house and going off, those all fall under consumer grade. And I think that that's what we're really truly looking for from the council is guidance on, with your contacts with residents, what is acceptable for us to be regulating in a proposed ordinance.
So, other council have questions or comments? I guess this is a work session, we're not making decisions here, but is there a desire to move forward on some form of a ordinance from the presentation that was provided today? Thoughts? Because if we don't tell the administration, they're not going to.
I think we need guidelines to present, so I myself, yes, they go in the median right across the street from me, and it's ITC property, and they're up and down all doing the rockets, and it ends up in people's yards, and then I hear the complaints of all the
Which is
debris
currently not
that's all
permissible,
over.
correct? But it
Right.
gets done.
But it's
And
done.
so but I think it's unlikely that the state fire marshal is gonna come down or prosecutions are gonna occur or go, as far as fines. And this is the opportunity for the city, if we wish to do so, how we're gonna regulate that at a local level.
Right. The
as was
challenge will be
presented.
how to regulate, how do you know where it's coming from?
Yeah.
That's gonna be tough.
Other thoughts? I'd like to see it move forward some fashion, something that's gonna give council a start point to consider, the difference between consumer and display. If there's an appetite from council for a display, that's gonna have to go through the procedures in which Mr. Cochran said. I'll have to think about where and how. Our parks and things. I'll wait to see what comes back, but I think we should have some in place, or we're just gonna continue the way it currently is, which I think at times is challenging for people and for, it already says you can't do it in the street, and we know that when you drive the next day and you see all the debris in the street that's not getting cleaned up, then leaves us to have to do through our employees. And I think that if they want to put fireworks in their yard according to what the state regulation is, then that's the time frame. It'd be difficult to manage other than through a process if there's council wants to consider individuals, but that means that every day there could be a permit because that's the day I'd like to do it for a personal reason. I'm not there for that reason. I think that it's going to have to be a display if we, for me, to consider applications. That's just my thoughts. We got about 11 minutes, so if there's any final comments, now's the time. If not, obviously you can continue to think that, send it to administration if you wish to do so. But if I'll give everybody a last final opportunity. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I guess the last item on the agenda is if there's any other items as time permits. Well, we have about 10 minutes. I don't know if there's anything on the agenda that council wishes to ask administration of before we get started, or before we adjourn this work session. Thank you. Motion from Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilman Germaine to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter?
Yes.
Stillgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham?
Yes, thank you.
You ready? It's time. That's okay.
She say 1 minute? Sorry. I'm going to call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter. Stillgrave. Vining. Jermaine. Stringham. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Here, I'd ask you all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
This evening, may our efforts promote the good of the residents of the city and all who visit.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please.
The next item is approval of the regular agenda.
Manager Robinson, any adjustments to the agenda?
Adjustments to the
Council?
agenda.
Thank you. Council, any questions on the agenda, approval of the regular agenda? If not, Councilman Stillgrave?
Second.
Motion from Councilwoman Stillgrave, supported by Councilwoman Stringham to approve the regular agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter.
Yes.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Jermaine. Stringham. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Next item, please.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount is $1,900,553.73, 1900553.73.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items from city council members to be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion. What that means is items on the consent agenda will be passed collectively all with the same vote. The consent agenda, there's also action items on the agenda as well that do come to council for individual discussion. And I know that there's packets up here. It's also is online. If there's any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion. Seeing none, Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Support.
Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Hayter, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter. Stillgrave. Vining.
Yes.
Jermaine.
Yes.
Stringham. Felder. Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is under presentations, communications, and public hearings. Item 5366, the Opportunity Center at ALCC 2025 Quarterly Report.
This was communication, which is included in our packets. Is any other comments? I don't see a representative here today.
I don't think we have a representative from MCOP here tonight, so it should serve just as a communication to council.
Yeah, there's no action item unless there's comments from council on the communication received, on which would have been the 2025 quarterly report. Seeing none. Clerk, next item, please.
Under council action, item 5375, proposed ordinance 25-005, up for its first reading.
Manager Robinson, any comments?
Your Honor, there was, as we had convened a recent ethics board of ethics committee on May 8th, we had discussions about certain language that was within the Ethics Ordinance 25004 in Chapter 58, Sections 4 and 6, and it was specifically talking about the language surrounding private gains and conflicts of interest. And there were some things that the Ethics Commission had made some suggestions, and our city attorney had made the appropriate changes. These changes were presented to the Ethics Board, the Board of Ethics, on July 8th, who approved the language and recommended that for council approving the new language, which was in your packet, for Section 4, talking about private gain, and Section 6, under the 6 standards of conduct would be the conflicts of interest.
Any questions for Mr. Robinson on this item regarding the, Councilwoman?
Unfortunately, I did not see this sections 4 and 6. Is that, why is that? Can we go over that? The sections 4 and 6?
Sure. I don't know if either Manager Robinson or City Attorney on Sections 4 and 6 of the city code, if it's there in the item.
Certainly, the language changes is currently before our recommended changes. It states under private gain, the current language says meals or beverages provided to the public servant by an individual or by a non-governmental organization during a meeting relating to official local government business. And that has been amended to say basically food, refreshments, or meal not exceeding $200 per person per meal, not to exceed more than $500 in value in a calendar month, provided that such items were provided to the public servant by an individual or an entity during a meeting related to the official local government business or in connection with a conference, seminar, or other similar training and opportunity attended by the public servant as part of the professional development. And that was included there because the old language in the ethics ordinance would basically not allow us to, we have certain meetings that when we go to conferences, et cetera, that we get invited by some of our vendors to go there to talk to different, and you're meeting with the different leaders from other communities, whatever, and they serve a meal. Well, if we're not allowed to take that meal, then we really can't be in attendance for those things. And that's why it was rewritten in order to contain limits on that to make it appropriate for what is currently and how business is done in the municipal world today when you're dealing with conferences, et cetera. And I would not want one of my directors going to a conference and not able to go and have like a networking event where you're learning and talking about city business with some of the vendors, and not be able to go to that because you're not allowed to accept the meal. So that's why the language has been changed.
And I think in Section 6, it's about penalties and enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes. Section 6 is about conflicts of interest and explains what a conflict of interest would be and what a conflict of interest isn't.
Other questions? Councilman Felder?
I understand the purpose of removing the blanket exemption, but the limits seem a little high for me. If I could propose, I'd say we cut them both in half.
In which section are you referring to?
Under the proposed amendment for Section 4, for $200 per person per meal and $500 per month, I'd say $100 per meal and $250 a month.
Manager Robinson, was there a discussion about that with the Ethics Board?
Well, the Ethics Board thought that was reasonable because there are some events you would go to that are black tie affair, et cetera, that there's event tickets, et cetera, and they really didn't bulk at the price, and I think that City Attorney Buds did do the research on that, and I don't know if Catherine, if you have any more.
He still thought those limits were conservative.
Right, he thought those limits were conservative in comparison.
Other thoughts from council? I mean, there's what's being presented, and Councilman Felder has a position of amounts that are half than what's being proposed. Comments? Councilwoman Stringham.
Listening to the explanation and reading the materials, I don't have a problem with how it's written. I think if you have it too narrow, it's going to be hard to know. Sometimes there's not always a declared value on some of the things that you're talking about. So that would make us in an uncomfortable situation if we were not sure, and then you could then miss out on networking that would be valuable. So.
Other comments? Okay, so there's no other comments. This is up for council action for a motion of some sort.
I'll make a motion.
Councilwoman Stringham.
I make a motion to move to place the proposed ordinance 25-004 on an ordinance to amend Chapter 58, Sections 4 and 6 of the City Code of Ethics on the floor for its first reading, and that the public hearing and final reading be set for August 4th, 2025.
Okay, I know you misspoke and I set up for a vote. It's a vote for the statement which was read. This is the first reading. And so there's a motion by Councilwoman Stringham, supported by Councilwoman Steelgrave on proposed ordinance 25-004, an ordinance to amend Chapter 58 Code of Ethics as was stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 25-004, Chapter 58, Code of Ethics. An ordinance to amend Sections 4 and 6 of Chapter 58, Code of Ethics of the Code of the City of Monroe.
Thank you. Next item, please.
The next item is item 5342, consideration to ratify the collective bargaining agreement with Comia Unit 1, Technical Professional and Office Workers Association of Michigan.
Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to ask Dr. Everly of our Human Resources Department and lead negotiator and contract in our collective bargaining agreement to give a presentation on the temporary agreement that we have reached with our Comia 1 unit.
Thank you, Manager Robinson. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, Clerk Lavoie. It's wonderful to be here tonight to celebrate our tentative agreement that we're bringing before you after some negotiations that have taken place between Comia 1 and the city administration. So the Comia 1 bargaining unit negotiating team comprised of Toby Worrell, Ben Notario, Kelly Nielsen, and Jeremy Balduff. They did a great job presenting their unit's priorities, and then we very much collaborated to bring them together with your goals and objectives and the overall long-term plan for the city. So we have highlighted parts of our tentative agreement for you that align with the parameters that you set for our bargaining, and I certainly would welcome any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council for Dr. Everly? I don't see any.
Okay, thank you
so
very
much. So the item before the council for consideration is to ratify the collective bargaining agreement as stated. Any other comments or questions from council members? If not, Councilwoman Jermaine? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I will make a motion, move to approve Comia Unit 1, Technical Professional and Office Workers Association of Michigan, TPOAM 2025 to 2027 collective bargaining agreement and authorize administration to execute the agreement on the behalf of the city.
I support that motion.
Motion by Councilman Jermaine, supported by Councilman Hayter on item 5324, consideration of the ratified collective bargaining agreement with Comia One Technical Professional and Office Workers Association of Michigan, T. Home. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham? Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is 5377, Education Center Lease Agreement with the River Raisin National Battlefield Park Foundation.
Thank you, Manager Robinson.
Your Honor, actually, that item as well as the Event Center Management Agreement underneath are both agreements that we are looking to get approval to enter in between the city and the River Raisin National Battlefield Park. And I'd like to give an opportunity for Director Cochran to be able to explain in any more detail and be able to answer questions in relation to these agreements.
Cochran.
Yep. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Clerk Treasurer Lavoy. So as the city manager indicated, we have two agreements for consideration this evening with the National Battlefield Park Foundation. The first is a lease agreement. So you may recall last year the city council approved an agreement with the National Park Service for their space in the facility at 333 North Dixie Highway. When the facility was originally built, we issued bonds for debt to build the facility, and at that time, it was owned by the city's building authority. And back in 2018, City Council had approved sublease agreements. It's rather complicated, but the city was the lessee to the building authority, and we operated the building. And we had agreements at that time, sublease agreements with the foundation, the Park Service, and the Monroe Convention and Tourism Bureau for lease space at the facility for the Education and Visitor Center. When we made the last bond payment last year and paid off the facility, ownership was transferred from the building authority to the city of Monroe, so we are now the owner of the building. And so we've renegotiated agreements with all the parties. First, the National Park Service, their lease agreement was approved last year. And now for your consideration tonight is the second lease agreement with the Battlefield Foundation. Their portion of the facility to be leased is the North Education Center, where all the educational exhibits are. The foundation is the one who has received all the funding to install those displays, and they operate the education center. Also, their office space on the first floor, as well as the gift shop, is also part of their lease space. And the remainder of the building is either continued to be owned and operated by the city or the National Park Service. And then I anticipate in the coming weeks, we will also have a lease agreement before you with the Monroe Convention and Tourism Bureau for their office that is also housed at the Education and Visitor Center. So the lease space is for a period of 10 years with a rent of $1. They also contribute toward the utilities for the building. The National Park Service contributes toward lease. The city pays a portion of the utilities as part of the event center rentals that is intended to be paid based on revenue generated from events. Then rent the facility, and then anything above that, the Park Foundation will be responsible for as part of their leases. Any utilities beyond that point. And so those are generally the terms of the agreement. Most of what has changed from the original sublease agreement to this agreement is the event center, and that is a lead into the next agenda item in that agreement.
Thank you, Mark. Questions from council for Mr. Cochran on this lease agreement with the foundation? Thanks, Mark. No
Thank you.
questions. Councilman Hayter.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion that City Council approve a lease agreement with the River Raisin National Battlefield Foundation at 333 North Dixie Highway and authorize the mayor and clerk treasurer to execute the agreement on behalf of the city of Monroe.
Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Steelgrave on item 5377, the Education Center lease agreement with the River Raisin National Battlefield Park Foundation. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter? Steelgrave? Vining? Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
Is 5378 Event Center Management Agreement with the River Raisin Battlefield Park Foundation.
Manager Robinson, as you said earlier, I see Mr. Cochran's here and ready, unless you have any other opening
I
comments.
have no other further opener.
So in the original sublease agreement that we had with the foundation, they were responsible for running and operating the event center, that is traditionally known as the South Arena or the south portion of the building. They are limited in staff capacity and resources to be able to fully market that facility to be occupied, as well as to staff for all of those events. And so we've had a lot of discussion. This was certainly a topic of discussion at the March 1st council work session, where we decided, city council gave the direction that we need to figure out what we're doing with that event center in the coming year. And so this is the first step of that. While we look and explore options and bring information back to city council, that's taking some time. But in the meantime, with the lease agreement being approved and that no longer being in their lease agreement, we need to have a plan in place for somebody to occupy, because we are still getting requests to rent that facility. It is available for use. And so what we are proposing is a 1-year agreement with the Battlefield Foundation to continue to operate that facility as they are right now. So they will market it, they will manage all of the bookings, they will manage all of the events and the rentals that take place in that facility. And they will share or split the revenue, the gross revenue profit on that lease facility 25% with the city. And it's our intent that that 25% will go back into the maintenance and utilities for the building while it's being rented and occupied to fulfill our portion of that agreement. So the period is for 1 year. The direction that you gave us at the March 1st City Council work session when we discussed your goals and objectives mid-year was to look at having a market analysis done and create a business plan for the event center. First, the market analysis to determine whether there is a market and it's feasible to have an event center in that building, and whether we could generate enough revenue to make it a profitable venture to help support the ongoing maintenance and operations of that building. And if it is, develop a structure and a business plan to carry that out, and what is a management structure for that. So we have been working with that. The Monroe Convention Tourism Bureau did provide us with a few names of some firms that can assist us with developing that market analysis and feasibility review. And so we've reached out to them, and we're getting proposals right now to conduct that. And then if we determine if it does look like it would be feasible, that it would be a profitable business plan for that portion of the building, we will come back to City Council with a proposed management structure, as well as how to manage it going forward beyond this agreement with the foundation. I think all different options are on the table, whether the city manages it or we contract with one of our partners to manage it and generate that revenue for the building. But that is all, as the fact sheet indicates, future policy decisions that we'll bring back once we have that for you. So in the meantime, this is a stopgap measure so that that facility can continue to be used and generate revenue while we evaluate these options.
Thank you, Mark. Is there questions from council members on this agreement? I appreciate the information of, obviously, as it says in here, a short-term agreement, knowing that we have an analysis being done. That was what the council spoke of and during goals and objectives, and then our review at the start of this year as well. As you said, it's kind of like a stopgap in between and where we may go from this after this year of lease terminates. Other questions or comments?
Have we done a demographics as to because we're competing with Frenchtown, of course, the feasibility of competing with them and maintaining a profit?
Yeah, and we certainly have a lot of discussion with our friends over at Frenchtown about their facility and what they're charging, what it's being used for, who they're targeting. And the market analysis that we're going to do is going to take a look at all the facilities, not just in Monroe County, but in the surrounding area too. I think an example of a great use that we had over the weekend that was a much larger draw, the Bassmasters tournament was in Monroe. And so if you went by the education center, the event center, at that point, the parking lot there was no parking spaces left. It was full of boats and trucks, and that was where they had their kickoff before they went out to fish, and then came back in and had their event. And those were people from all over Ohio and Michigan and Indiana that came to that event. So we're going to be looking at both what our area event centers, how they use their facility and what the demand is, but also, are we a draw for more events like that can bring in more tourism, more special events on a larger scale?
And their size capacity as well within that facility in relation to the other facilities and the amount of visitors that can be at an event. So and
Yes.
that'll be assessed as well across all the parameters.
And we will also have an idea with the market analysis if it is a positive outcome and it's something we want to pursue. What are we going to have to do with the facility to make it achieve its highest and best use, and how can we make those investments, and what phase and things of that sort, leading into our capital improvements program.
There's no other comments. A motion is up for council action. Oh, Councilwoman Stringer?
Make a move that City Council approve an event center management agreement for the event center at the River Raisin National Battlefield Park Education and Visitor Center for a period of 1 year, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Motion by Councilwoman Stringer, supported by Councilwoman Germaine on item 5378, Event Center Management Agreement with the River Raisin National Battlefield Park Foundation. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter?
Yes.
Steelgrave?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham? Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Next item, please.
The next item is 5368, Land Division, 211 Jones Avenue.
Thank you. Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor. The Habitat for Humanity of Monroe County has submitted an application to seek the land divide of the parcel located commonly known as 211 Jones Avenue. And what they're looking to do is separate that land, which currently is one parcel, and it's currently zoned as public recreation and open space, to taking a portion of that parcel, which I believe is 3.25 acres, and to be able to develop and ultimately, under the ownership of Habitat for Humanity, to both parcel A and parcel B to combine, to develop that property into those habitat, homes for habitat that they do. And if, Mark, do you want to speak further on it? Yeah. Director Cochran, who has been involved in this negotiation and whatever, can explain.
Okay, Mr. Cochran.
Good evening again. So we do have an application by Habitat for Humanity in partnership with Monroe Public Schools to do a lot split that would, as the city manager indicated, split off just about 3 acres of frontage on the Navarre Field property that is right along La Pleasance Road for the purposes of building additional multifamily housing. And so the city council is required, the planning commission first considers a request, makes a recommendation to council for a lot split or a parcel division, and then it's city council's authority to perform the final approval of that. So the intent is to build 8 duplex units, so 16 new residential units on this property through a project called Project Double Impact. And what this is, in those 16 units, 8 of them, each unit would be owner occupied in the main unit, and then there would be an additional dwelling attached to that unit that would be rented out by Habitat for Humanity and help people find affordable housing in Monroe. As City Council is aware, affordable housing is a challenge in our community, and even for Habitat for Humanity, affordably building new homes is getting more expensive, and they're not immune to this more than anybody else. And so this provides an opportunity for home ownership, but also to have income coming in through for them to help with the mortgage payment and reduce the costs by having the attached rental unit that would be secured by Habitat for Humanity. And so the first step we're looking at is for the site. This would be the 3 acres spinning off from the remainder of the property, which is about 7 1/3 acre would be left to the west for Navarre Field. First would be if City Council approves a land division this evening, we would have to rezone the property. The city manager indicated right now this is zoned public recreation open space. And so in order to facilitate the new residential, they will have to apply for a rezoning to allow for the use on the property. And then if that use is approved, then they will have to turn in a site plan for review and approval. So there's much more to come in terms of what is the site layout. We've seen some preliminary sketches for how the redevelopment would happen on the property, but nothing has been turned in final. And so you'll notice in the staff report that was provided to the Planning Commission, we don't have setbacks to review, we don't have height, we don't have building materials or anything of that sort yet, but that will come at a future date. Tonight, we're purely considering the split of the 3 acres off of the larger parcel.
Questions from council for Mr. Cochran? Questions? Okay.
Do we
Councilwoman
already have,
Jermaine?
do we already have owners for these homes?
No, so that's Habitat will work as they develop those to find both the owners and sell them as well as the tenants.
So my question, it's before us today regarding the land split, because the property is owned by Monroe Public Schools on the field and this portion of it as well. And there, I guess between Habitat and Monroe Public Schools, they're willing to, I'll say, sell off you said
3.25, yep.
25 acres there, and to be used for housing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, my question is, you mentioned that the property is, I just thought of this when you said it, if it was earlier, I would have asked already, but you said it's zoned or it's recreation or park?
Yes, so in our zoning code, it's currently zoned PROS, which is public recreation and open space.
Right.
However, we, City Council at the last meeting did approve an update to the zoning code. This parcel remains, and so we'll still have to go through the rezoning process. If for some reason the property does not get rezoned or the site plan does not get approved, it would still be, because it is identified in our residential housing strategy, as well as the future land use map. So when we review a land division application, we review the city's master plan, the future land use map, the existing land use map, and the zoning code to make sure it wouldn't be in conflict with any of those policy and vision documents that have been adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council, and this was complementary. So we would still have, if for some reason something didn't move through with the habitat development, a 3 acre parcel that would be identified for future residential use because Monroe Public Schools does not need it anymore or utilize it.
Because that transition is, and it may come when you talk about the rezoning, that public hearings will be set, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So whether it's today or later, there's opportunities, right?
Yes, there will be public hearings at both the Planning Commission as well as City Council because it is an ordinance amendment.
Okay. Other questions from council? You have a question?
Yes.
Councilman Felder.
Has Habitat for Humanity expressed interest in developing other undeveloped infill parcels throughout the city?
Yes, and so we've had conversations with them both about this property and future options as well. I know David Graves with Habitat is with us this evening. And this is a new concept that they've explored, the project that they're working on, and certainly this is a pilot. It's been identified as a pilot for both Habitat here locally, but also as a potential model for Habitat nationally, because everybody's dealing with the same challenges with costs for residential development. And so we'll look at additional properties and projects in the future too, as we see how this one goes.
Very good.
I guess I'm going to share this because I think it's important. You know, the Monroe Public Schools owns the property. They have other properties as well. And there's been discussions with the city about those across the city that may be potential for housing.
Yes.
So this is not the only location that Monroe Public Schools is looking with that. Still wanting to maintain their properties they need to deliver their services through education in the school system, so. Thank you. Any other questions of Mark? So I know that I mentioned to Manager Robinson, I know I spoke with Clerk Lavoy. You know, this is not a public hearing in this setting. I think there are people that are here that have interest in this topic. I learned that from Mr. Cochran before the meeting. And I know that there was some attendance, I believe, and maybe comments at the Planning Commission meetings. And I appreciate the Planning Commission's doing their diligence and also providing their correspondence here. I guess I'm gonna, because public comment comes at the end, and the public comment comes after the council makes a decision here. And this is one of those unique situations where I think that people take their time to come here to listen, but they also may have something they wish to say. I'm going to entertain if there's comments from those that have some thoughts on this, knowing that it goes the same as we do with any public comment. Is, you know, there is a time limit, but if there's a comment that somebody wishes to make, we'd ask you to step forward, state your name. Jurisdiction of residence was probably the city of Monroe, if you're asking, probably, but I could be wrong. And just be mindful of the time of 3 minutes. So knowing that this is going to, if approved by the council, there'll be other phases, as was mentioned, as this comes to be, to learn more about not just the project, but what that means in relation to housing. So, not the norm, but I'm going to ask if there's comments. I see somebody leaning in the back that may want to say something. Yes, please come forward to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction of residence, and the comments that you have. Be just mindful of the 3 minutes, okay?
Absolutely.
Appreciate it so much.
My name is Seth Harville. I'm in jurisdiction of Monroe City. I live right off La Pleasance Road. I guess my biggest concern when getting the letter in the mail citing these kind of plans is looking across. I live right across the street from Habitat for Humanity, and looking at the property of Habitat for Humanity, you can see on their grounds it's a very distressed property, and they have very distressed outbuildings, and their property itself kind of looks distressed itself. So I guess my biggest concern is, why are they developing these structures when they aren't even focusing on their own buildings, and they're not well maintained? If you look both on the La Pleasance and the Jones side, you can see there's lots of overgrowth, and there's lots of structures that are just very distressed. And then my question also would be, if these units get built and no one wishes to buy them, what happens with those properties? Are they all going to be leased out at that point? Or is there going to be, are they just going to sit vacant for an extended period of time? And who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of these properties, since there's going to be a lease on each one of them through Habitat for Humanity? And there's also going to be an owner occupied as well. So those are kind of my biggest thoughts with this. And then the other thing is, if you look on the property, there's a huge ITC easement on the property. And so my question is how are those structures going to be built around that easement, and how is there going to be access to it? If the address is on 211 Jones, there isn't really access there because the ITC easement is right there. And so access would have to be made off La Pleasance Road. So where would the addresses be, and would there be a new street made for those properties?
Those are all good questions. I know that gets worked through the site plan. The parcel as an entity is Jones Avenue because it's all together. That's the request here is to parcel that off, which I know you understand. And therefore, I think, as I read in the fact sheet there, that there's a drive intended to come onto La Pleasance, so they would be La Pleasance Road addresses.
Gotcha.
This property is in the city. I can't speak for the facility other than what you see or others may see. It's actually in Monroe Charter Township. It's not in the city.
Okay.
So it's an oddity of the jurisdictions that we have. That doesn't lessen your comments. I don't mean to say it for that reason.
Okay.
But those conversations with the administration that we can have also.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for your comments, Seth.
Thank you.
Other comments from those present here this evening regarding my thought is, again, want to make opportunities for comments because it is moving forward and there's going to be many more steps. Yes, sir. Name, please, and jurisdiction.
James, 633 Stone Street. I understand that there's supposed to be a bike path that's gonna run through there. Is that gonna interfere with the bike path? Or,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because the train, no, it will not, because the bike path actually, the non-motorized path is on La Pleasance Road, and the reconfiguration into Jones Avenue. It'd actually be going the other way on the Jones Avenue, not down La Pleasance Road. It's in the works with the grant funding that we received from SEMCOG. So your point's well taken. That was part of a reconfiguration of the intersection, but also making, the main thing is so the trucks will not come down La Pleasance Road, and it'll have to go to where currently is Jones. That's one of the reasons the bike path will continue along Jones. That's being planned. So it will not have an impact on that.
okay, thank you.
Good question. Comments? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Alexis Consiglio, and I live within the city of Monroe. I actually live directly across from the proposed duplex plan site. I want to start by saying that we appreciate the mission of Habitat for Humanity, and we fully support affordable housing where it fits. However, I feel like this location in particular is not very ideal. One of the big things that concerns me, especially as a parent, as someone who lives here and sees the traffic and such every day, bringing in 8 duplex units and adding 16 families. La Pleasance is already a high traffic area, and speeding is a real issue. And this is, I feel, kind of a smaller plot of land for such a big development. And I feel like adding many new families would increase traffic, make turns more dangerous, heighten the risk to our children and pedestrians. Another thing that I had here is we live in a historic single-family home neighborhood, and that's a big part of what defines our community. And I just feel that it would kind of just add cluster, I guess, and it doesn't really, I guess, fit in with the area. Another thing is it's adjacent to the school playing fields, which are huge active parts of our community. And I also feel like this is just kind of a missed opportunity. This area is regularly used by the community. We see neighborhood kids playing within that field. As we left, a dad and his son were playing catch. We see the same people walking their dogs through there. So, when we got the letter, we were thinking maybe this would be like the perfect opportunity for a playground or picnic tables, recreational use for the community. So those were just kind of some of our concerns we wanted to address. I guess we just want to see more of like a vision of what the plan will be, or I guess blueprints of what it will look like, just to kind of put a vision in our mind. And that was all. Thank you.
Alexis. Other comments from those present? Seeing no further, this is item 5368, land division of 211, Jones Avenue, and the parcel number is stated. Any final comments from council members or questions for administration? If not, this is up for council's action. Councilman Hayter.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed land division for parcel 39-00090-000, commonly referred to as 211 Jones Avenue, as presented.
I couldn't, okay, thank you. Couldn't tell where it came from. Thank you. Motion by Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilman Vining on item 5368, land division 211 Jones Avenue, parcel 39-00090-000. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hayter?
Yes.
Stillgrave? Yes. Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Stringham?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. I'm going to make a comment before, because we'll have public comment later, in case those that are here that made comments on this item, before I go to council members. But, you know, please stay engaged along the process. I think there's some good questions or comments that are there. I think that don't miss the planning commission's opportunities, because those are recommendations that come forward to council as well. And I know that from Habitat, Humanity's here as well. They'll have input along those lines. So if you're best engaged, you'll have an idea. I think one of the last questions was, well, what's it going to look like? I think that's a great question. And I think that makes a difference as we move along, and so we can understand what the expectations are as it comes back to council. And I think Mr. Cochran did make what happens if it doesn't come to be toward if it doesn't come to fruition. So, but thank you for being here. I appreciate that. July still. Councilman Hader.
Thank you, Your Honor. I only have one thing this evening, and that is to remind everybody that the River Raisin cleanup's coming up on August 9th. It'll be from 9 to 12 p.m., and we'll be meeting on the riverfront parking lot behind 116 West Front, and looking forward to that event. Got pulled out of town last year and wasn't able to be there, so I'm looking forward to being back there this year. That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stillgrave.
Thanks, Your Honor. Party in the Park will be happening on August 3rd from 12 to 5. That is where you'll find Tino and Maya on the grill. They'll be cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. Totally free event. It is also our Fill the Truck campaign for non-perishable, non-expired food items, backpacks, and toiletries. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Vining.
No comment this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you. I want to congratulate our police dog, Apollo, for his finding during a traffic stop, as well as the officers that were with him. I think Apollo's a boy, I'm not sure, but that was a fine that was a fine job of our police dog. That just shows me the importance of our police canines and how much they can do for all of our community. And the fair parade is Sunday, so come on down to Monroe Street. I believe it starts at 1, and get your peanuts from Kiwanis. That's all.
Councilwoman Stringham.
I was reminded at how quickly summer was going when I went to the store this weekend, and the back to school shopping was well underway. So just encourage everyone. There's all of the great comments from the other council members on the river cleanup and all of the things coming up, and just enjoy as much as you can as what the city has to offer, because summer does end.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Sawyer Homestead had their summer party yesterday, I believe. The IHM have their Jubilee celebration coming up on this Saturday at 3:30. One of the sisters is celebrating 80 years of service to that organization. That's so wonderful. I do want to draw attention to an item that was lost in the consent agenda, item 5330. Ms. Ramos has a development project that she is pursuing in our city, and I very much appreciate her making that investment in our community. I think that it's very welcome to the neighborhood and the development that we're going to see there as we try and grow back our city to what we all envision it to be. And a very happy retirement to Councilwoman Stringham. That's all I have for this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I just have a few comments this evening. I'll start by reminding, I think as I mentioned at my last council meeting, that our sister city students from Hofu, Japan will be arriving on Thursday. Actually, they'll be on the same plane coming in to Metro with our students that have been there for a little plus 2 weeks. And they're coming back on the same plane, so it'll take one time for us to pick all the students and bring them together. But we have a welcome celebration and welcoming here on Thursday, the 24th at 5 p.m. here in City Council chambers. If you have an interest, please come and you can come and support, see the students. I know that the Deputy Consul General from Japan in Detroit will also be in attendance for his support with our sister city relationship. Tonight's on the consent agenda. There was an item that I want to bring to attention. It was an appointment for the Employee Retirement System Board of Trustees. Mr. James Consier. I know he's here. Jim, thanks for being here. And I talk about appointments that we have and how important they are on boards and commissions and opportunities to serve the community. There are vacancies in others boards and commissions, and if people have an interest, please contact me. But on the other hand, I know Jim brings a lot of experience. He retired from the city years ago. He's still working. He was a fire marshal, but he also has many years of experience serving on the pension board on behalf of the fire department. He will be the city's representative as city liaison, city representative on the pension board, as we call it, to ensure that things are done in the fashion to make sure we have a fund that is able to serve our retirees through their life after working with the city of Monroe. So congratulations, Jim, and thanks again for your interest. The River Raisin National Battlefield Education Center was talked about on a couple occasions tonight. If you missed the opening for the Education Center, the National Park's been open for many years, but the Education Center specifically, if you've not been out there to see it, take an opportunity, go there, just walk in, talk to the rangers there, or even the foundation staff that might be there, and go into the Visitors Education Center. It's kind of can be self-guiding, but also they have staff there to kind of give information about what all goes on. Those are my comments this evening. And again, thanks to those that were here this evening to talk about a topic. Stay in tune with it as well. And I know that the staff has been receptive to calls. That's how I knew that we'd have some people here today. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, comments?
I have no comments this evening.
No comments? City Manager Robinson?
I don't have any further comments either. Thank you.
It's public comments, so again, those that are present here, the official, I guess, comments time period. If you have comments in public comment, please step forward, say your name and jurisdiction of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Katrina Calnan Ramos, and I wanted to say thank you for voting on the land for 643 Church Street, and I look forward to becoming one of your newest residents. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So as I asked the next person to come up, it's another opportunity where we have land that, and throughout the community, those lots that Councilman Felder asked about is how do we build on those? And Katrina has an interest and purchased a lot to have additional housing in our community, which, as we know, as was stated, it is a council's priority how we develop housing of all attainable levels and different styles. And we have various projects that are going. I know that Mark Cochran and the development department's working on that. I'll stop because it's public comment. Comments from those this evening. Other comments? I saw somebody in the back. Please come forward, please. Again, your name, jurisdiction of residence, and 3 minutes.
My name's Kim Totske. I live in Monroe, the city of Monroe. Is that what you needed?
Yeah, that's
oh,
it.
okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to address the mayor and the city council, and I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kimberly Totske, and I'm starting a nonprofit organization that will provide free notary public services to the veterans, the low income, and the displaced. And what we plan on doing is we want this to become nationwide. There are so many notaries in the United States. It's unbelievable. And I was looking at the, hold on, I'm sorry. I was looking at the veterans and the poverty and the housing information for our city and for our county. And I've got all those numbers right here for you guys to look at. I'm nervous as I can be. I'm so sorry.
If you wish not to read it all and you have an interest for us to receive your information, at conclusion, give it to the clerk. She'll make copies and we all receive it.
That would be so helpful.
This way you can
It
be
really
comfortable
would.
and say what you want to say from your heart as well as read if you wish, but we'll make sure that we receive those after.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so nervous. This really means a lot to me. My husband was a veteran. He served in Vietnam. He passed away of leukemia, which we believe was caused from Agent Orange, which this is very common. It's happening to a lot of veterans. And he became disabled later in life. And I know what it's like to live with somebody who's got PTSD and who's been a veteran, and how they've lost 40 years. That he worked for 40 years and he lost his job because he lost his leg. He lost everything, literally everything, his pension, and it was terrible. And I was his caregiver. And I've seen how society treats people with disabilities and how the veterans have been treated over time has not been fair in my eyes. And I thought the only way I can really honor my husband is to start this foundation and offer these services to the people that are in need. And as we grow, what I want to do is I want to add classes for people to learn to actually cook and feed themselves properly, healthy nutrition. I want this to help the community, help ourselves. You understand? Am I making myself clear? I'm sorry. I'm trying to. But yeah, it means a lot, and I need your help. I need your guidance. I need funding. I need volunteers. I need direction. I need brick and mortar. There's everything. We need everything because we're starting from scratch. So I thank you.
Okay, Kim, because you're just about at your arch time, but that's okay because you have information. That way you don't sit there and read. You get to give us your thoughts as you have. So please make sure Clerk Lavoie gets that. She'll make copies for all of us to read and for the administration. I know Manager Robinson, I know you've made contact with the city before this evening. These are the type of things that go to the administration. They'll do kind of a review analysis. They'll come back with reports to the council. You'll be notified as we have further discussion about what you're looking to do, and is there a role in which the city has here, and what would that be, and what would it look like? And once that's vetted through administration, it comes back to us, and you'll be advised of that, okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I wasn't better at presenting this.
You have the papers, and we can read them. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for being here. Other comments from those present here this evening? Any further comments from those present? Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilwoman Germaini to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Hader? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaini? Yes. Stringham?
Yes.
Felder? Yes. Mayor Clark?
And thank you all for being here this evening.